Sam Bankman-Fried, the embattled founder of the FTX company, that crypto exchange that went kaput. He's doing a media tour and getting a lot of chances to explain himself and how he managed to either lose or swindle something like $40 billion away from investors and clients. Bankman-Fried, who was the Democrats' second largest political supporter in terms of campaign contributions in 2022, now says he's down to just $100,000 and only has one working credit card left. The point, though, is he's in the Bahamas and not in jail someplace or facing charges even yet. Let's welcome in Dave Rubin, host of the Rubin Report, also the author of Don't Burn This Country. Dave, great to see you.
John, good to see you. Am I to believe that you, John Bachman, have never swindled a group of investors out of $40 billion? Because the information I was given before the show today does not say that.
Yeah, not quite $40 billion, Dave, but, who among us hasn't swindled, but I want to play a clip to start out with. Here he is at the DealBook Summit in New York. Our invitations must have gotten lost in the mail, but here he is talking about his role in all this.
Obviously, I don't personally think that I have, but I think the real answer is that's not, it sounds weird to say, but I think the real answer is that's not what I'm focusing on. There's going to be a time and a place for me to sort of think about myself and my own future, but I don't think this is it. Like, right now, I mean, look, I've had a bad month.
A bad month, Dave? I think most of all, this might be an indictment on MIT. This kid is not an idiot. He went to MIT. He's apparently pretty smart. How did we get to this place where he can be in the Bahamas doing a media tour with impunity, basically, talking about this stuff?
I mean, John, how crazy is it that this kid, who is so profoundly unimpressive as a speaker, as a communicator, the way he dresses, everything about him is so deeply unimpressive, and somehow he became the genius of the Ponzi scheme that swindled these billions and billions of dollars out of all of these otherwise thoughtful, interesting, rich celebrity types and Wall Street people and everything else. Something about this story stinks to high hell, and I think it's far more than just the money that was lost. The connections that this guy had in Hollywood, in politics, the fact that this story broke basically 2 days after the election. So in essence, the Democrats, got results that they kind of liked in the election. The red wave didn't happen. And then 2 days later, we basically find out that the #2 donor to the Democrats is a complete scam artist. I mean, something is so weird about this thing. And the fact that the New York Times, in that case from the clip that you showed there, and MSNBC and CNN, that they're giving him, sort of kids' gloves coverage, in essence. They're not, he is a fraudster who has destroyed lives, and we are only beginning to see the repercussions of how this will hit the economy, the political world, and everything else. Yeah, the guy should be facing charges and probably spend a long time in jail.
I would love to get a call into Elizabeth Holmes right now, who's probably in some federal prison, get her take on this. She just got sentenced to 11 years for the whole Theranos issue. Let's also talk about this dinner that we're still talking about at Mar-a-Lago. There's an interesting account of the whole thing. Mark Caputo from NBC News wrote it up. He talks about Kanye West and Nick Fuentes stopping by there. Apparently, the master troll got trolled in this situation. We also, I don't want to tell people to change the channel, but Kanye is apparently on Alex Jones's show. There's some clips of that going on the internet. Personally, we might need to Baker Act Yee before he hurts somebody. But talk about how much damage you think this has done to Donald Trump.
I think it has done damage to Trump. Look, I personally like Donald Trump. I've interviewed Donald Trump. I like his kids. There's a situation in which I would vote for him again, depending on where things shake out in the next couple of years. But this is really bad. It's bad because, look, it's one thing to have dinner with Kanye, who he was sort of friends with, and yeah, there's some controversy around him, but if you talk to people, sometimes you can hopefully explain things in a little bit of a calmer, more sensible way, and maybe that was partly what Trump was going to do, or he just wanted to have dinner with a celebrity. Okay, fine. The fact that Yiannopoulos and Fuentes were allowed in there, let's give Trump the benefit of the doubt. Let's just say Trump didn't know, because if he knew, then it's really crazy. So let's say he didn't know. He must have people at Mar-a-Lago that vet these people, right? There are people that check IDs. The video of Kanye and Fuentes walking in the airport en route to Mar-a-Lago was leaked before they got there.
And if
someone in Trump world is on Twitter still, and they had to tell him. So the issue for him, I think, is that this shows what people are concerned about with Trump, which is that does he surround himself with the best people? Again, that's not me trying to take the guy out. That's just if he's going to be the president again, or if he wants to be the president again, then he has to be fully competent in that. And I think he's damaged from this. And Fuentes and Kanye may have planned it, because if Kanye wants to run for president, one thing you'd have to go through is Trump. So why not take Trump out early?
And whoever cares about Donald Trump the most, I would assume that's Melania right now, or maybe his kids, but I'm sure they got to feel the same way. You got to have people, like if you were working with the Trump team and you saw that Milo Yiannopoulos was coming to Mar-a-Lago, you would say, no way under any circumstances would you let this guy in the Mar-a-Lago. Same thing with Nick Fuentes. I believe Donald Trump that he didn't know who this guy was. But you got to have some checks and balances in place to prevent this stuff from happening. Real quickly, before we get to the White House, and I have to say au revoir to you, Dave Rubin, we want to talk about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's come out on behalf of the protesters in China, ironically, after doing this before.
Obviously, everyone in China should be allowed to express themselves, should be allowed to share their perspectives and indeed protest. We're going to continue to ensure that China knows we'll stand up for human rights, we'll stand with people who are expressing themselves.
Okay, that's what he said most recently, but we all remember how he handled the Canadian truckers protesting the COVID lockdowns and the vaccine mandates, and he seems a little scared after that browbeating he got from Chairman Xi when the two met just recently.
Yeah, it's really incredible with Justin Trudeau, because the fact is that his actions are in such stark contrast to his words when it comes to his own citizens, right? So it's very easy. You can say all the nice things you want about the Chinese protesters, but we know that when his own people protested, he was trying to lock them down. He was trying to make protests illegal. He was trying to freeze their bank accounts. He was, in essence, calling all of the protesters who just wanted to go back to work and open up schools. He was, in essence, calling them Nazis and white supremacists and transphobes and the rest of the nonsense. Trudeau is an incredible politician, because for someone to be so vapid, so obviously inauthentic, and to still get reelected, even though it's only about 30% of the country that voted for him, it really is incredible. So you got to give the devil his due. He has a skill as a politician. As a person, not a fan. Not a fan.
Well, that's one thing we always do, give the devil or anyone else their due when it is deserved. And Justin Trudeau certainly deserves some credit for his ability to get reelected with 30% of the vote in Canada. It's amazing stuff. Dave Rubin, great to see you, as always. And happy Festivus.
John, real quick. John, I sent you our holiday party invite, and I just want to be clear, you cannot bring Nick Fuentes or Milo. You can bring your wife. That's it.
Deal.
Oh, they like that one. They like that one.
That's a promise. Bianca loved it. They will not be coming with me, Dave.
Bianca can come. I'll send her the invite, too.
Yes, Bianca can come as well. Great to see you.
There, Dave.
Great to see you, Dave.
No crooked establishment.
None of that twisting the truth. No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax.
Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think.
They let me decide.
Newsmax.
Real news
For real people.